You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
The trading day doesn't start when the opening bell rings. Pros understand that risk never sleeps, and market-moving events happen around the clock. How can you arm yourself with the information you need to understand what's going on across the pond and how it can impact your portfolio? Welcome to the European Market Brief, your go-to source for information on the fast-moving European derivatives markets. Each episode brings you expert insights into the latest market trends, discussions of cutting-edge trading strategies, breakdowns of exciting new products, and analysis of thought-provoking trading activity. The European Market Brief, brought to you by Eurex, is your trusted source for the latest insights on European trading and market trends. As the home of V-STOXX, V-STOXX, DAX, and European rates derivatives like the Bund, Bobble, and Schatz, Eurex stands as the leading European derivatives exchange. Learn more about trading Eurex futures and options at www.eurex.com. So join us as we shine a spotlight across the pond and explore the cross-border volatility, regulation, and innovation that makes the marketplace so fascinating. It's time to get the European Market Brief.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back. It is Tuesday time once again to roll out the European Market Brief, the show here on the network where we glance across the pond and see what's going on in those markets in the Eurozone. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as on the network upon which all of you folks are binging these days. Remember, if you somehow just subscribed to the European Market Brief, you are missing out. Make sure wherever you get your favorite podcast, you are subscribed to the full network, nearly a dozen other shows coming at you. And of course, if you want great pro Q&As, you want great options oddities episodes, and of course, you want to participate in the next, rumor has it, it's coming up soon, the next volatility death match, only place to get them, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more as we learn who's joining us on the European Market Brief. This episode, first out to the hinterlands of Chicago we go. We are joined once again by the man who has a foot in Chicago, a foot in Indiana, and is always somewhere in between. None other than Dr. Vic/V-STOXX himself, Mr. Russell Rhoads. Mr. Rhoads, welcome back to the program, sir.
As always, absolutely thrilled to be here. You had me at volatility when you asked if I would participate in this program, because that's my first love. So look forward to talking about European vol today.
We always manage to sneak in a little vol. It's what the kids want at the end of the day, sir. And then also joining us, holding down the Eurex hot seat this week, our old pal, Mr. Matt Koren, the head of sales for the Americas over there at Eurex. Matt, welcome back to the European Market Brief, sir.
Hey, Mark, glad to be back. 2 Marks on the show today. I can't wait.
I know. We got our fill of marks today. It's going to be very confusing for the listeners because last but not least, joining us, surprisingly enough, for the first time on the network, that doesn't seem like that's possible, but it is the case, our good buddy, even though he hasn't been on before, first-timer, Mr. Mark Wator, the global head of sales over there at Barchart. Other Mark, welcome to the European Market Brief, sir.
Yeah, really glad to be here. And I'm used to being the other Mark because I'm one of 7 Marks at Barchart. So usually it's just last names for us.
That is true. And as our first timer here on the show, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of your background in the space, as well as what the heck is Barchart? What are we talking about, sir?
Yeah, so my background in the space is actually it's pretty a pretty short bullet point. I've been at Barchart 18 years. And I'm our global head of sales. And that comprises about my career in the derivatives industry also. So Barchart itself, though, a 30-year-old company, started in 1996. The first website for futures data in North America and the world. Where it is today, you have Barchart.com, which represents our retail-facing site and our media brand. You have our commodities division, which is a series of ag workflow tools following the life cycle of grain. And then you have the division that I look after, which is the data side, which is where we take all of the 60-some futures exchanges, equities, options, and mutual fund data on Barchart.com, the proprietary data we get out of the commodities arm and make it available to institutional users, large corporations, startups, everything under the sun, in order to power their trade ideas and their customer-facing products.
All right, with the team assembled, listeners, it is time to commence our continental conversation.
It's time to catch up with the thought leaders who are shaping the European derivatives markets. It's time to have Continental Conversations.
Love that theme music. So jaunty, listeners. All right, welcome to the Continental Conversation, the portion of the show where we explore some interesting topics or facets of the European markets. And these conversations have been pretty far-reaching in previous episodes, and we're going to do that again today. Going to cover a lot of ground. But Mark, as our guest and our first timer, let's start with you folks. Obviously, this show, we laser focus in on what's going on across the pond in the European markets. And I have to say, one of the more common questions we've received on this show is, that's all cool, but where can I go to actually see some of this stuff, see some of this data, see some of these markets? What can I track? What can I analyze? And what can I use to do that? So luckily, you're joining us on the show today. Walk our folks through some of the European-centric offerings you folks have over there at Barchart, sir.
Yeah, so European futures have long been a part of Barchart as we have that kind of global look into the futures and derivatives space. Right now, we have 61 total futures markets. About 1/3 of those are European. And while ags and softs remain a large focus for us, really, we've had a number of European markets that we've brought on in the last year or two that is really part of our data expansion policy and our roadmap into the future. We're seeing a lot of interest across power, energy, and carbon markets, which has led to us expanding into the EEX side of things, also bringing on a lot of the nodal markets, which is a really unique partnership for us. We've also seen interest in Baltic freight. So we've been bringing on that side of it. And then LME has been another large push for us. We had to redo the feed structure and everything with that as they launched a new one in spring this year. But that allowed us to bring a symbology across electronic, ring, and interoffice venues for the first time ever. And we now have a clear picture of the volume and open interest along with complete coverage of LME. So that's really been a year where we're focusing on pushing into these European markets more. And you're still then, you have your equity indices products, all the standbys that, Eurex has given us over the years. But this new push we're seeing is just a lot of interest generated in the European markets. And we brought that all together into what we have now, a section on our website that is a European market overview. So rather than trying to mix all the different regions together, if you will, we have the exact portion we have for North America now broken out into the Euro-specific information on Barchart.com.
I love it. I love to see the organic interest in all things European out there. And, I can't contain him anymore, Mr. Mark. Even when you're not on the show, your buddy, Mr. Dr. Vic / V-STOXX, has been quite the fan, quite the proponent of what you guys had to offer. In fact, we weren't going to use him on the episode this week. He insisted on coming on just to talk up all things Barchart. So, Mr. Rhoads, I know you've become a fan of these tools. What's been catching your eye over there, sir?
I've been using Barchart, goodness, I was looking at my subscription page because I was also going to talk about how Mark's is going to owe me a commission on this one. It's very economical for the premier part. It's a little over $200 for the year. And I use it for for those of common listeners, when I talk about V-STOXX versus VIX, this is my data source. And I think monthly it would be $29 a month, but I pay the full year because I know I'm going to keep using it. And when I've talked about breaking out, coming up with and I'll talk further about this later, but I use 10:30 Eastern as a closing time for VIX and V-STOXX, and that's how I compare the two. I think that's a good time to, if you want to spread trade the two versus each other. Plus, you can get all the historical futures going back. So a lot of the curve studies, et cetera, I have done involve getting an awful lot of data from Barchart and then, twisting it around, et cetera. And then finally, outside of the topic, so I'll be very quick, but those of you that have heard about the block trade paper that I wrote, the block trades that I used were the largest directional block trade according to Barchart every trading day in 2022 and 2023, and I just updated it with 2024. There's a lot of uses, and if you haven't taken a look at it, and honestly, nobody's paying me for this, but if you haven't taken a look at it and you love playing around with data, it's probably worth a quick free trial, or just paying for a month to see if you use it, because I think you'll find it useful. It's been very useful to me, and I have access to a lot of things.
Yeah, you're always talking Bloomberg and everything else on the network, but you can repeatedly go back to bar charts. So Mark, you should cut this man to check. Even behind the scenes, off the air, he's been pushing me. Have you tried all the Barchart stuff? So he's really down the rabbit hole. He's definitely drank the Kool-Aid, as they say. But he's mentioned some of those tools and screeners. We like the futures talk here, but obviously we go deep into the options as well. Russell's been playing around with a lot of those tools and screeners. We love the vol screeners, implied versus realized vol. Hit us real quick. Give us kind of an overview on the options and the vol side for folks who are looking for that stuff. What do you guys have to offer?
Yeah, the options and vol side is really something we've focused on expanding over the last couple of years. And where we're really seeing a lot of that expansion right now is going to be on the new trade idea generation side of it. And that's a lot around what we call our options screeners and strategies. We now have 32 easily customizable strategies loaded into Barchart.com. And it also goes across our Commodity View front-end trading platform that allows people to build a strategy based on a certain underpinning symbol and quickly turn that into a trade idea while maintaining whatever risk exposure they are looking to have. It's a really powerful tool that's taking what usually would be an advanced trading strategy and allowing retail users to easily construct it and build multi-leg strategies out of it. So, and also, down the line on the data side of it, I think we'll get into a little bit later, but we're doing some really interesting stuff over a root symbol side with a volatility index. That is something that is powering the back-end tools that we're seeing here. So it's everything you see on that Barchart.com side. I know you were talking about playing with data there, Russell. Everything you see on that Barchart.com side, there is a large database that has an enterprise data product behind it that is directly powering everything you see on the screen. So you could really, once you get into that, you can really go off the deep end, because then it's just limitless data back to the early 2000s for you to try and play with on the option side.
Well, Matt, Mr. Mark brought up data. That is your domain. When you're not talking to us here on the show, you're out there looking at data, both on the active retail side and the professional side. When you're hearing the inquiries from the customers right now, what are the interesting? Mark just broke down kind of some of the products of interest over there at Barchart. What are some of the areas of interest you're seeing in your domain on the data side, sir?
Yeah, and I'm super excited we finally got Barchart on the show, because this type of product is exactly what I would say the less, let's not say less sophisticated, but non-institutional crowd is looking for. And to Russell's point, just the other day, I had to pull up a V-STOXX options price. My Bloomberg didn't work, and I went to Barchart and was able to get it quicker than I probably could get it from the Eurex website. So it is a truly fantastic tool. But kind of to take a step back on what the non-institutional crowd has been looking for, I think if you look pre-COVID, there kind of was this perception, at least in the derivative space, the futures and options space, that it was Wall Street versus Main Street, institutional versus small mom and pop traders. And generally speaking, Wall Street won and Main Street would lose. And that perception largely came from I would say, a unequal balance of data and access to data. Really coming out of COVID, GameStop was obviously the first example of retail kind of finding a way to get the right information, being able to talk to a community of fellow traders and being able to effectively capitalize on that. And I think that's what really kind of really opened up the space, particularly in the U.S. From a retail standpoint. So, what are we seeing? We're seeing a lot of non-institutional guys look for a one-stop shop to get news, live or even delayed data, trade ideas, which it's fantastic to hear that Barchart's working on more trade ideas and screeners, and then also kind of a way to talk in a community of other traders, which I think Reddit was a great example of where that really took off. I think what's interesting is if you kind of look at the spectrum of data on the far left, there is basically having no data at all and just kind of trading off of nothing. The far right is having, full Bloomberg subscriptions and spending a lot of money on institutional level analytics. You're starting to see more non-institutional people gravitate towards the Bloomberg side of the spectrum. They're definitely not buying Bloomberg terminals yet, but the fact that Barchart has a relatively affordable premium option and Barchart's competitors as well, it's giving them a great avenue to get a lot of the analytics that they wouldn't be able to otherwise get. In terms of, raw data versus advanced data, I think in the US, you're definitely starting to see that retail crowd start to toy around with APIs, and some of that requires back testing of data. Not seeing that so much in Europe yet, but I find no reason to believe that won't come in the coming months.
Yeah, you're right. The evolution on that retail side, when we first started this, Mark's been at Barchart pretty much almost the entire time that we've been running Options Insider. Next January will be 19 years, which is terrifying to say out loud. But in the time we've been running this Options Insider thing, we have noticed quite the evolution. When we started, retail was on one side, professionals on the other, and there was an enormous chasm in between, a gulf, if you will. And these days, certainly post-COVID, that gulf has vanished. We have a lot of people playing in that gray area in between. We've seen an enormous increase in sophistication and knowledge on the retail side, no small part thanks to the large amount of content and tools that are available out there for folks to arm themselves with some information. So that certainly makes the evolution of the tools and the data side more important, even for what would traditionally be the retail audience, which in the past people would say that they don't need the advanced stuff. But those days are gone, Mr. Mark. So Mark I should say Matt, too many M's on the show this week. Matt just touched on all of the cool stuff they have to offer over there on the Eurex side. But you folks also have some cool data feeds and ways to play with data on the Barchart side as well. Obviously, the big pros and institutions are coming in and utilizing a lot of these complex data feeds, but also a lot more of the advanced retail, dare I say it, the pro-tail. I'm not a big fan of that term, but the pro-tail folks are adopting these as well. What are some of the cool things you folks are bringing to the table on the data side, sir?
Yeah, so the data side is really the underpinning of everything you see on Barchart.com. So we hit on the concept of having the trading strategies and the strategy builders on Barchart.com. Above Barchart.com sits a web app that we have called Commodity View. It's our front end platform. That then begins to put more computing power behind the underpinning data. And when we're doing that, we can start taking, different, like Kona probability curves to actually see where an option strategy will end up over time. But it's all running off of these underpinning data sets. And we're seeing the largest growth coming from interest in more the historical futures option side, actually. And we've been building out that data set for quite some time, but what we've really focused on doing is doing the really hard parts well. Because futures options historically is a very messy data set. It's multidimensional, it's massive, it's a lot of noise. So what we've tried to do is take the first step that a data science team would have to undertake and make that data more accessible for people that don't have a team of 4 PhDs looking after it. What we do is we've begun aggregating the data into root symbol or expiration. And what we're doing there is taking this and being able to put composite volume, implied volatility, open interest, and then taking a step further even and sorting it by moneyness, periodicity, and creating implied volatility indexes over a 7 to 360 day maturity. This really represents what people would actually go and do with the data as the first step to clean it and try and generate a signal. But we're doing that so people can easily onboard it and begin manipulating it. And then we're putting it back into our front end tools so people have a place to sit there and actually play with it, even if you don't have the ability to write code and ingest it that way. And all of that sits there. And then we start looking to 2026 and the next layer of it. How are we going to make this even more democratized? And that's going to start being with AI. And AI allowing you to talk to the data to get the end result that you want. It's the same concept as the strategy builder. We created a way that people could actually put the strategies together without having to do it by hand. AI allows the end user then to work with the data to be able to get a functionality out of it that they may not have been able to do the mathematical calculation themselves. But as long as they know it exists, they can start using it and manipulating the data in that way. So for us looking forward, it's about taking these large data sets, distilling them down to actionable data, and providing that across the spectrum from your large institutional traders, your hedge funds, your quants, to everything down to the, as you call it, pro tail or more sophisticated individual trader that has the ability to manipulate data.
You know, it's funny. I think a lot of our listeners coming from the world of equity and equity options don't appreciate how much work has to be done behind the scenes in the realm of futures and futures options to make that data approachable and usable for the end. Even something as basic as the underlying. You know, if you're used to trading Apple or Tesla options, Apple stock is always Apple stock. You can go back and search any day and you know the exact closing price. Future is a different ball game. You have to look at it. You know, is it front month you're going to go? You're going to make a constant maturity future. Just these very basic things have to be done before you can even make the data even somewhat approachable. So there's a big lift that has to go on behind the scenes and make this kind of data usable to the end user. So I'm glad to see you folks over there at Barchart fighting the good fight over there. But let's keep rolling. I know, Mr. Rhoads, whenever you're on, sir, we like to talk a little vol. In fact, we like to squeeze it in just about every show whenever we can because the kids love the vol at the end of the day. They want to talk vol all day. And when it comes to the European market brief, that vol comes in the lens of V-STOXX. I mentioned at the top of the show, we get questions a lot about data and where they can act. In fact, I think we have a few of those later on in the show coming up. So stay tuned for those, listeners. But another question we get all the time is, how is the U.S. vol scene and the vol dynamics here, how is that comparing to what we're seeing over there across the pond? So, Mr. Rhoads, I will toss it to you, sir, for your perennial question here on the show. What are you seeing in V-STOXX land right now? And how is that comparing and contrasting to what we're seeing over here in the U.S., sir?
Well, you always make fun of me about the calendar stuff, but everybody.
I would never make fun of you, sir. Never would.
You used to make fun of me about talking about calendars, 3-day weekends, and all that other kind of stuff. But I've always dealt with that December depression with respect to the VIX future versus spot VIX, and the same thing shows up in V-STOXX. And I also want to address another question that I saw down on the list because I think it's kind of appropriate for this. Someone was asking about the V-STOXX calculation and kind of inferred that it was different than the VIX calculation. It's really not different than the VIX calculation. It's using the similar methodology. It uses slightly different expirations, but it's not using at the money options like Scott Nation's products. It's very structurally similar to VIX. So I think they're good apples to apples comparisons for expected volatility in Europe across the continent, because V-STOXX is based on the Eurostoxx 50 versus VIX, which is based on, the S&P 500 in the US. Now, they do deviate from time to time. There's a recent paper out about the different type of factors that people think are influencing volatility indices. And we go back and forth with how much anticipation may be getting into the volatility indices and the volatility futures pricing. When we're leading, I was looking back at some of the works that I've done for Eurex on V-STOXX. I got something about a British election, got something about a French election. Whenever there might be something that's very European specific on the horizon, you might see V-STOXX and the V-STOXX term structure at a bit of a premium relative to VIX, and vice versa if there's some sort of uncertainty hanging over the U.S. economy or the U.S. markets. That's where we are right now with VIX. The VIX term structure doesn't look like you would expect it to look with the December contract having a couple of weeks to go. The December contract has narrowed the spread between spot VIX, but it's still at about a 50-60 cent premium, whereas V-STOXX is right in line with the spot index. Therefore, and I'm an academic, and so I'm not an investment professional, and I can say things like this. If you think tomorrow might bring some volatility with the U.S. Fed, the December V-STOXX future might be a better alternative than the VIX future. It's in line with the index. It's still open, even though Europe is closed. It's open until, I believe, 4 o'clock Chicago time. But it is open when we get the Fed reaction tomorrow. So with V-STOXX right in line with the index, if you're thinking about trying to play a spike and maybe putting a limit order in there to catch something, I would favor V-STOXX over VIX right now. And we know that VIX is my first love. So
how wild is that you just said that out loud, sir? The V-STOXX is perhaps a more attuned, more accurate way to play the U.S. Fed decision than VIX itself. Isn't that wild? Just saying it out loud is kind of wild, sir. I love it.
But I will go opposite. And this is the one that has always stuck with me. Brexit. Brexit was a surprise. V-STOXX was at a premium. I don't know why I'm using my hands to demonstrate, because nobody can see me on camera. But I have my hand way high up for V-STOXX and my hand way down low for VIX. If Brexit had not passed or been approved or whatever, the V-STOXX would have come down tremendously. Because V-STOXX kind of remained at pretty much an elevated level after that occurred, but VIX played some catch up. So you can, you do want to look at the other market when you're thinking that there might be a volatility event that was going to spread or ripple beyond your own borders. So there are, and I really do think right now, if you think they're going to get a volatility spike tomorrow associated with the Fed, V-STOXX futures are at a 2 cent premium to the index, look cheaper than VIX futures, which are at a 50 or 60 cent premium to the index.
See, listeners, that's why you tune in to the European Market Brief. We just blew your mind with that factoid. So if you're listening to this show, especially early, you have a leg up on everyone else who's come in later on demand, maybe after the Fed announcement. They missed that little nugget. Yet another reason why maybe you should be hanging out in the live, listening right now, which, by the way, the live folks are championing what we were saying earlier about the need to clean up futures and options data. So they're glad someone's out there fighting the good fight. Speaking of fighting the good fight, Mr. Matt, you're always out there fighting the good fight as kind of the V-STOXX guy over there in Eurex land. This is your domain. This is your baby. So when you're not talking to us, you're out there talking V-STOXX with a lot of folks. So what are you seeing on that front in terms of interest? A lot of stuff going on towards the end of the year. Russell just pointing out kind of some of the interesting nuances between December VIX and December V-STOXX. Is that driving any interesting positioning in V-STOXX, Lancer?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of interesting things going on. First thing I'll preface with, Russell brought up the point about the V-STOXX calculation. There was a great white paper that STOXX wrote, I think 2-3 months ago. If you Google V-STOXX 101, fantastic white paper that digs into the underlying components, the underlying sub-indices. Definitely take a look. It's well written, and it explains how the index was calculated. But from, in terms of, volumes that we're seeing recently and kind of what's going on in V-STOXX and vol land, It's definitely been an interesting year. We kicked off the year with both the V-STOXX futures and options side, seeing another record year. April 1st really kind of blew some people up. I think some people took some pain. And then you kind of had this slow grind lower in vol as the, AI trend took over. A lot of these tariffs were kind of wound back, and I'm not sure anybody's fully confident that they know what tariffs are currently on. But the fact of the matter is, last couple weeks, with the kind of resurgence in volatility a little bit, or I should say choppiness in the market, definitely have seen more volumes again of both the futures and the option side. To Russell's point, I think what's been interesting is we've definitely seen higher than normal trading activity on the option side. I think what's interesting on the option side and kind of what we're seeing from a positioning standpoint, if you look at U.S. markets, S&P is up roughly 16% year to date. Nasdaq's up 22% year to date, and that has the high flying Nvidia name, Nvidia Palantir in it. DAX is up 21%. Eurostoxx 50 is up 17%. Stocks Europe 600 almost 15%. So it's been interesting, and historically, European markets don't have those high flying tech names. They pretty much are in line with U.S. markets this year, and in some cases have outperformed. What we're seeing is people kind of just hedge a little bit of tail risk going into year end. It's nobody buying the, crazy, 30 strike, 40 strike V-STOXX calls. But, V-STOXX today spot is around 16.5. You're definitely seeing some guys buy the 17, 18 strike. Some guys selling the 15, 16 puts, just to manage a little bit of volatility into year end. Not much on the European calendar between now and the end of the year. You got ECB, and I think BOE on the 18th. Pretty much a 0% probability of a cut at this point from the ECB. You have quarterly rebounds and rolls in 2 weeks, but other than that, it's pretty much the end of the trading year for European markets.
Before we roll on out of vol, Mr. Mark, Russell gave a good plug for your V-STOXX offerings. A lot of folks listening to this show are pretty keen on all things European vol. They want to check out what you folks have to offer, specifically when it comes to V-STOXX. What do you folks have over there in Barchart land, sir?
Yeah, so the first place to start would be our Barchart.com website, and just head on over to the European Market Overview tab. And from there, you can dive into the V-STOXX data we have available through our Premier memberships. You also have the ability to download data. We also have Excel plugins where you can manipulate data in there. And it'll give you a whole host of real-time, delayed, historical, across different periodicities. And you can start playing with that V-STOXX data in nearly any way you can think of.
There you go. So everyone who's asking about V-STOXX data, and I think, again, we have a few coming up here in a little bit. There you go. A nice, easy place you can get it here when you're looking at all your other markets over there in Barchart land. But Matt, going back to you really quickly, you kind of mentioned what's going on the European front. It is, of course, December. End of the year usually brings with it some interesting flow on the options and indeed on the institutional side. We see a lot of people start rolling stuff towards the end of the year, looking out towards next year. Are you seeing any interesting activity on that front? The European players coming in to roll, maybe are they doing it a little bit earlier this year, given everything Russell was just breaking down with all things Fed coming up this week? And of course, there's always an election in the offing somewhere in the Eurozone as well. How is that impacting and driving some of this annual roll activity we're seeing, sir?
Yeah, so most Eurex equity index contracts are quarterly. V-STOXX is an exception, and then from a fixed income standpoint, most are quarterly as well. Euribor, some of these shorter dated contracts are monthly as well. We just wrapped up the fixed income roll. It was actually one of the bigger rolls of the year. December is usually a pretty big one on the equity side. Most of that is kind of year-end funding related. If you get a little bit of a Santa Claus rally, sometimes you see people off sides on positioning. What's interesting this year is we're not really seeing those funding pressures that we saw in past years. I think part of that is you kind of have a more balanced market, given the market has kind of been moving sideways the last couple months. But again, there's still a couple weeks left in the year. In terms of open interest, I think the most interesting role that we're going to see is probably the DAX roll. That just tends to be because that's a jumpier index. It's a massive notional. Stocks Europe 600 should see probably the biggest roll that it's seen in a while. That's largely on the back of you're starting to see some guys move away from Eurostox 50 into Stocks Europe 600. One, it's a more broadly defined index. Two, it incorporates some of the non-EU names like the UK. One thing I will point out, and I'm not sure if Barchart has a kind of pace of the roll tracker, but we do on our website, like a lot of our competitors have. Definitely encourage listeners to go over it and look at where some of these rolls are trading. You still have 2 weeks yet before, or I should say a week before these rolls really get going. Eurostox is, as of today, roughly 3% rolled. On average, it should be roughly in the 15 to 20% range rolled by, say, Monday. On average, roughly 80% of it will roll by expiry. Other interesting roll to take a look at, and this is another jumpy one that may be interesting to some listeners, is the Eurostox Banks roll. So that is the Eurostox Bank Index. This contract really took off post Silicon Valley Bank. Obviously, a lot of people needed to get direct exposure to the European banking community. This roll tends to be kind of all over the place, more thinly traded. We expect by Monday anywhere from 10 to 30% to be rolled. So again, pretty wide dispersion. And then some quarters, 50% will roll by expiry. Other quarters, 80% will roll. So really kind of all over the place. Most of these are kind of, looks like they're going to be in line with historical averages. Eurostox, the March contract is currently 23 index points above deck. DAX is 163 index points above deck. For the listeners on the line that aren't fully aware of how roll pricing works, that's just a factor of interest rate assumptions and dividend assumptions. So these should really get going Friday, Monday at the latest, expire next Friday. Again, you have ECB, BOE, as well as Fed tomorrow. So could see some volatility in these.
A little bit of vol, different December this year than we've seen in years past, a point that Mr. Rhoads has been bringing up on a variety of shows for a while. Should make for maybe a more interesting vol end of the year than we're normally used to seeing. All right, I want to make sure we have some time left at the end of the show to tackle some of these questions. Let's go around the horn with everyone, kind of get some maybe final thoughts and takeaways. Matt, since we're already in Eurex land and in the Eurex hot seat, we'll start with you, sir. If you have any final thoughts or takeaways on this side, and also we haven't had a chance to check in with you in a while here on the show, so maybe we'll also throw in there, as you're looking back on the mad, interesting, some might say insane year that was 2025, are there any products that maybe snuck onto your radar that surprised you? You said, oh, I wasn't expecting to see interest in this one this year, sir.
Yeah, I think we've touched on some of these in past shows, and I think the last show was our credit show with Bloomberg and some of our product development guys out of Europe. I think the product that really kind of exploded in popularity for us this year was our credit complex. U.S. corporate IG credit as well as high yield credit, not really a big retail type product. Both those products have seen quite literally 10,000% growth rates this year, which I don't think anybody had on their bingo list for this year. The other big one was mini DAX. One thing that we're seeing is DAX continues to kind of grind higher. It's a total return index, so those divs get baked in. It's becoming a very costly index to trade. So DAX, I think, is at 25,000 today. Big DAX has a multiplier of 25 on it. It's a pretty expensive index. Mini DAX has seen a 500% growth rate. Again, a lot of that is retail looking for a more kind of cost-effective way to trade. But you're also starting to see more institutional move into that space as a way to kind of more finely tune kind of delta exposure. Other area that I think has been super interesting for us, and everybody's seen this globally, is the interest in the crypto space. We've done, I think, a couple episodes on this now where we listed both Nano Ether and Nano Bitcoin futures. Those contracts have really exploded in popularity. Our ETH contract is 1/10 the size of an Ethereum. Bitcoin contract is 1/100th of a Bitcoin, which seems to be the right size for retail. We're pretty confident there's a healthy chunk of retail, and again, that kind of pro-tail crowd in this space. which is good news.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, listeners. If you missed any of the previous episodes, maybe you're intrigued by what Matt's talking about. Our last episode was all about the credit derivatives. And of course, you can go back into the archives, check out episodes we did about the DAX and of course, about all things crypto. It's all there waiting for you, listeners. And Mr. Rhoads, some final thoughts, takeaways for our listeners here. For you, of course, as you're looking at the vol landscape shaping up, maybe some final things people should keep an eye on for the end of this year, and maybe a couple of hints of teases of what they should keep an eye on for next year, sir.
Well, so I it blows you away sometimes when I sit here and talk about V-STOXX being a little better than VIX at different things, but it's great being an academic and being completely independent. I've found through testing that there are everybody's looking for a trade that they can put on it a credit that gives them some upside exposure to volatility and, ratio spreads, et cetera. And I've come up with a 1x2 system that works really well to catch spikes in V-STOXX that for some reason does not want to work in VIX. I had updated that through the fall of last year recently. I'm going to go back and do that again and see how it worked. I know it worked very well back in April. So just see how it worked and maybe put an update up about that before the year's over with. But it's just, I always, I was fortunate enough to work at the Options Institute under 3 great guys that had about 15 years of experience on me, and I soaked up everything that they would say. And one of those smart guys would always say, you want to look at 2 ways to trade everything. So if I'm thinking about a vol spike at some point, or I think volatility is overpriced, there are 2 pretty good liquid volatility markets out there for you to look at. So, and I know data has been a hurdle, but Barchart data is more than enough to do your analysis with.
You just love that bar chart, sir. I mean, I didn't get you a bar chart cert. Mark, you can leave. I think Russell will just keep plugging your stuff for the rest of the show. But Mr. Mark, as our guest, the last word, at least for this segment, is yours, sir. You kind of touched on a lot of the cool stuff a bar chart has. You know what? Matt brought up crypto. So if there's any cool stuff you want to plug on the crypto side, a lot of our listeners are intrigued by that as well. And maybe also same question for you as you're heading into next year. Maybe you want to leave some of our listeners for this segment, at least with some hints, some teases of what they can look forward to coming down the pike on the bar chart front. Now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So, 2026, we're going to launch something really interesting. So we had just announced a partnership with Kelley to bring events markets to Barchart. And we talked a lot about what's going to drive volatility. And we were talking about announcements from the Fed and different economic events taking place. And when we bring those events markets live to barchart.com, what you're going to start to see is a sentiment, a public sentiment that is probably baked into the trading positions of some of the traders that are looking at those volatility, those index products. So it'll be really interesting when we start bringing in a new, not so much a new asset class, but a new source of information that can possibly be brought into a trading strategy to try and generate alpha. So for us, there's going to be a lot of excitement around it. It's a new marketplace on Barchart, and it's going to be something that we think is going to drive a lot of interest, and finding the application of it in traditional trading venues, I think is going to be something to watch going forward. So that's our big thing for 2026. Crypto is part of that also. If you look at the event markets, they have events for the different prices that crypto is going to meet, and you're gonna see what market sentiment is for that, what public sentiment is for crypto and backing it. So we have the crypto data, and we are going to be able to combine public sentiment with cash data and be able to push these and look if there is maybe an arb opportunity between it, maybe to treat it as a hedge, however you want to go and tackle it. So we're targeting mid-January, late January, to be able to have this on barchart.com. It'll be available in all of our tools. It'll be available as raw data feeds for anyone that really wants to go and start crunching the numbers on it. for us, that's where we're really starting to see 2026 take shape is how can we use this new data source to actually measure market movement.
Predictions, all things hot. I got a feeling we'll be talking more about that next year. But now it's time for you folks to take the reins as we answer your questions. Indeed, we answer the red phone.
What's on your mind as you're navigating the wild world of European derivatives? Let's find out as we answer the red phone.
All right, everybody, welcome to the red phone, the portion of the show where we tackle all your questions. A lot of these have come in from earlier episodes. We've kind of just been rolling them until we got to an episode where we discussed them, quite frankly. So let's take a couple of these here at the top because they're similar themes and maybe combine them together. First off, we have this question from Biltz, maybe Biltzy. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. They want to know, can you recommend some good sources for information on V-STOXX options trading activity? Well, I think we did that, but I think we can add a little more to that. And then also we have a similar question, comes from James Edwards. He's a little bit longer. He says, I love the TWIFO reports that you provide on that show. Thank you. He's, of course, referring to our This Week in Futures options show listeners. And if you haven't checked that one out, great data over there, great analysis of all things futures options. And folks do love the reports that go along with that show. They say they are a fabulous resource that you provide to your listeners. Well, thank you very much. Because of that program and that data, I'm slowly becoming a nat gas options trader. Oh, don't put that on me, James. That's all on you. Nat gas is not for the timid, not for the faint of heart. But I'm glad you feel comfortable dipping in your toes into those waters. He says still mostly 1 to 2 lots, but growing. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, you're welcome. He says I've been listening to the full network in search of other products to add to my arsenal, and I've been enjoying the European market brief. Well, you came to the right place, sir. Is there something similar available for Eurex options where I could see the latest activity, volatility, skew, etc.? If not, can I put my vote in for one, as I would certainly find it useful, and I don't think I'm alone. Thanks again. So a combo question on kind of the data and the tools. Maybe Matt, as our Eurex / V-STOXX guy, we will start with you. I'm sure you receive similar questions like this all the time. We kind of touched on Barchart. I'm sure Mark will have some stuff to add there in a second. But in general, when folks come to you and they say, I'm looking for some more data, maybe some reports, some analysis on V-STOXX, and Biltz also asked for some interesting info on V-STOXX options trading. What do you tell them, sir?
Yeah, so I mean, this request is at the top of my list of requests for our market data team as well. You can obviously get trading activity, trading prices, open interest, things like that from the Eurex website. I'm sure you can find that pretty easily. But things like volatility, skew, we do not publish that sort of information anywhere on the website. And so that's the type of stuff that you would have to get externally. I always point people towards Barchart, as I think Barchart is a kind of a great tool that has most of our products listed. And that encompasses most of the things that James is looking for. So I think between the Eurex website and Barchart, you can probably get 98% of the things you're looking for.
Mark, anything to add there? We kind of touched on your V-STOXX offerings already, but Biltz wants to know in particular V-STOXX options, if you have anything you want to mention there. And then James is asking for, we do some reports on our TWIFO program that break down, the most active options in a particular product. We talk about the vol, the skewed. So do you have anything along those lines they can look at over there at Barchart, sir?
Yeah, I mean, we can hit on both of those, to be perfectly honest. And there's kind of two different levels to it. There's what we have on Barchart.com, which is going to go in depth with the options information, and it'll have your Greeks along with some of the trade flows. But it is very much in delayed, and there are some limitations to it in terms of what we can show. The other side of it is we do have then the more professional front-end trading platform, and that's really where it starts to become a visualization layer of all the underpinning data we have. And that's where you can get the real-time data along with a lot more of the volatility outputs and the different vol surface information that you can start to look at on that side. So it's levels of it from us. it starts with barchart.com. And as your comfort in trading and your sophistication in options trading increases, you can start looking more to the more professional level visualization tool of Commodity View.
All right, let's keep rolling here on the V-STOXX front. Matt, we got this one a little while ago. We've been saving it till the next time you joined us on the show. I'm sure Russell will have some things to add on this as well. This comes from Andrew CPA, so I guess he's a CPA. He says, are there any levered or inverse ETPs offered on V-STOXX, or are there any plans to offer these products in the future? Matt, obviously, when we're talking the VIX and vol ecosystem here in the U.S., it's not just VIX. There is a whole pantheon of products out there that offer vol in just about every flavor you can imagine under the sun. As he mentions, inverse, there's levered, all kinds of crazy flavors out there. It sounds like he's looking or maybe hoping for that in the V-STOXX land. So what info can you give him on anything that's maybe available now or perhaps coming down the pike, sir?
Yeah, so the bad news is there was a both long V-STOXX and inverse V-STOXX ETN listed many moons ago. They were both delisted at the start of COVID. Those were ETNs, so they have some credit risk to them, and they were never relaunched. So Eurex doesn't launch ETFs, generally speaking, in the U.S. That was an externally launched fund. And Russell, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anything else launch within the U.S. space. There is some listed over in Europe on some European cash exchanges, but they may not necessarily be accessible to the U.S. crowd if this listener is a U.S. trader. One thing I will note is we are always, as an exchange, actively going out and trying to push ETF issuers to kind of relist these, preferably as an ETF so that they don't get delisted again. So if there's any ETF issuers listening in, we would definitely love to have a conversation, to be able to support this market again.
Talk about terrible timing, delisting a vol product right before COVID. But I can see the argument. The ETNs, you're right, are a little bit problematic. That ETF wrapper usually a little bit easier for more traders to digest. Mr. Rhoads, we'll get out of here with you here. If you have anything you want to add on the ETF front, have at it. Then also, you already kind of touched on this earlier, but we'll just officially answer it here. This comes from the creatively named NLE3E. They want to know, apologize if you've already answered this one. Actually, we just did earlier in the show. But how is skew incorporated into the current V-STOXX options? I assume there is a skew component, and these are not simply at-the-money vol calculations. Like Volley, thank you for your time. Well, you are correct on that. So, Mr. Rhoads, anything you want to add in more detail on those two for NLE3E, sir?
No, the only difference between VIX and the V-STOXX calculations is the options that are used for the input. Recall, it may even be as much of a decade ago now, but recall SIBO is now using the Friday before and the Friday after a 30-day time frame, those two expirations, to come up with the VIX calculation. V-STOXX continues to be based on third Friday option pricing. But otherwise, it's the same sort of calculation. And the answer to the specific question about skew is it's the same sort of weighting structure with respect to out of the money calls, out of the money calls plus out of the money puts feeding into the calculation. I did want to say one small thing with respect to the lack of V-STOXX ETPs in the U.S. Do keep in mind that the V-STOXX future multiplier is 1/10 the size of VIX. So, I think one of the reasons the VIX-related ETPs are kind of popular is the risk associated with trading trading a VIX future at 1,000 multiplier. So, there's less currency risk associated with V-STOXX as well. And if that big VIX future turns you off and the ETPs are not your flavor as well, again, there's a smaller version, there's a smaller volatility index with good liquidity out there that you can trade futures on.
All right, everybody. That music means we have come to the end, man. Amazing how an hour flies by when you're having fun here on the European Market Brief. But before we go, let's go around the horn. One final time, check in with everybody. Mr. Matt, sir, if folks want to check out all these products we're talking about, or a whole bunch more we didn't have time to squeeze into the show, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
You can always email me, matthew.koren@eurex.com, or go to the Eurex website. There is literally hours and hours and hours of information that you can find on our site.
There you go, Eurex.com, the wellspring from whence all of this content flows, listeners. And of course, Mr. Rhoads, sir, if folks want to keep up with all of your analysis, I have a feeling you're going to get a few questions about using V-STOXX around the Fed. If folks want to hit you up with those questions, where should they go? What should they do?
The easiest place to find me is in Twitter. It's my full name, @Russell Rhoads. You can always email me. That's the best place to find me. My IU email, everything goes to spam unless it's from a student. So that's really why I don't share that one. And when students email me from their Gmail account, I don't respond and I get in trouble. So just Twitter is by far the best place to find me. And I check the DMs on there on a pretty regular basis.
There you go. 2 S's, 2 L's, RHOADS on the good old Twitters. If you've gotten to the Tampa weatherman, you've gone too far. Dial it back one and you'll get to Mr. Rhoads. And last but not least, Mr. Mark, we've been talking Barchart all episode. We're talking V-STOXX. We're talking the data feeds. We're talking vol. We're talking crypto. If folks want to check out all of that cool stuff for themselves, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Just go to barchart.com and go down the rabbit hole of the endless information that we offer on there. If you need to reach out to us directly, there's a contact us form there, but also you could give us a follow on Twitter. And feel free to interact with our media team, and they will be able to point you in the right direction, have some fun with you, and get you moving on all the volatility and European futures data you need.
Barchart.com. Be careful, listeners. It is a dangerous rabbit hole. You go down, you might end up like our good buddy Dr. Vix here with Barchart tattooed on your arm. Either way, Barchart.com, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. That is going to do it for us on this episode of the European Market Brief. Back again with our usual array of content throughout the rest of the day until we're back again sooner rather than later. Another episode of the European Market Brief. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The European Market Brief, brought to you by Eurex, is your trusted source for the latest insights on European trading and market trends. As the home of Euro stocks, V-STOXX, DAX, and European rates derivatives like the Bund, Bobble, and Schatz, Eurex stands as the leading European derivatives exchange. Learn more about trading Eurex futures and options at www.eurex.com.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.